This week, we're talking about one of the freshest beers you can find, wet hopped beers. These are brewed just once a year, right after harvest when the hops are still dripping with oils and aroma. It's a short window, but a special time for brewers and beer fans alike. I'm going to dive into what makes wet hopped beers so unique, the challenges of brewing with fresh hops, and what flavors you could expect when you grab one fresh off the tap or when you crack open that can. Joining me are three great Colorado breweries that know how to do it right. Brews Beers, Flight Co., and Public Offering. All that and more on Beer in Front. This is Beer in Front, part of the Beer Media Group. Every week I'll talk to people in and around the beer world and get their stories all about beer. That's Beer in Front, and it's coming up now. Welcome to episode 276 of Beer in Front. I'm your host, Dave Zalatoris, and Beer in Front is a charter member of the Beer Media Group. Fasten your seatbelts. We're going on a flight today to pick up some fresh, wet hops. It's wet hop season. Fantastic beers are coming out all the time. They're not going to be around for long. So I'm going to talk about kind of the history of wet hopped, some styles that you can get that are out there. I'm also going to talk to three breweries in Colorado who have made a fresh wet hop beer, hear their stories. They're a lot closer to the hop area than we are here in Chicago. So it was cool to hear the lengths they go to pick up some fresh wet hops for their beer. I am going to have two fresh wet hop beers from Illinois. I'm going to have one from Dovetail and one from Off Color. They put out offerings this time of year. They collaborate with a farm in Michigan, and they use hops from Hophead Farms. So I'm going to have those two beers. I recorded this during the week. This week, Sierra Nevada Celebration is allegedly out. So hopefully I will see that and I could tack that on at the end of the episode and do a review of the 2025 edition of Sierra Nevada's Celebration Ale. All that and more on this week's Beer in Front. Every fall, beer fans start talking about fresh hop season. That fleeting time when breweries get their hands on hops straight off the vine, rush them into the kettle within hours. But how did this tradition start? To understand fresh or wet hopped beer, you have to go back to the Pacific Northwest, the heart of the American hop country. For decades, most hops were dried and pelletized before being shipped to breweries, and they still are. A lot of breweries use pellet hops. It makes sense for consistency and shelf life of the hop. But in the 90s, a few brewers wanted to capture something a little different, that green, resinous, almost herbal-like quality you get when hops are used right after the harvest. Sierra Nevada Brewing is often credited with bringing the style into the national spotlight. In 1996, they released Harvest Ale, a beer that showcased hops picked and brewed the same day. It was revolutionary. It was the first commercial wet hop beer that most people ever tried. That beer inspired countless others. Now with their Celebration Ale, fans around the world can enjoy fresh wet hop beer every fall. Today, brewers in hop-growing regions, especially Washington's Yakima Valley and Oregon's Willamette Valley, they treat this harvest like it's a holiday. Trucks are loaded with freshly picked hops. They race them from the fields to the breweries so the brew team can get them into the boil right before the delicate oils begin to fade. The result is a juicy, grassy, almost tea-like flavor you can't get any other time of the year. And it's not just the West Coast thing anymore. breweries across the country, they now collaborate with hop farms, or they even fly hops overnight to recreate some of that same farm to fermenter freshness. It's a celebration of agriculture, timing, and craftsmanship all rolled into one. When you see fresh hop IPA or a wet hopped pale ale on tap this month, or in your bottle or can, remember you're tasting beer at its most perishable and at most alive. It's the flavor of harvest in a glass. It's here for a moment and gone until next year. All right, welcome back. This has to be the coolest thing I've talked about in the 5+ years of doing this show. My next two guests take making a fresh, wet hopped beer to the next level. Ryan Evans from Brews Beers, who you know from past episodes, and Eric Serrani from Flight Co. Tower in Denver join the show now to talk about this project. Eric, Ryan, thanks so much for talking today.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, for having us.
All right, so let me get this straight. Weather permitting, you guys get in a plane, fly over to Montrose. You go visit Audrey over at Billy Goat Hop Farm, who's a great person, by the way. Grab some freshly picked hops, get on the plane, fly back to Denver, and you brew a collaboration beer called Hop is My Co-Pilot. I need to hear about this. I'm just going to sit back, sip a beer, and hear this story.
Yeah, it's rough, right, Eric?
Yeah.
Someone's got to do it, though.
Someone's got to do it. Yeah, this is probably the most complicated beer ever brewed. But somehow it comes together without a hitch, except for this year when the weather gave us some troubles for an entire week straight, and it just didn't happen. But yeah, there's a lot of coordination involved, and the way that it came about was kind of fun. Ryan can share the story of him camping up in the hop farms up there.
Yeah, I mean, every year I would take our brew team up to the hop farm. It started off in the Paonia area before Billy Goat, and so we were up there camping one night, and of course the farmer comes down and he's having a couple of beers with us, and after a few beers, I'm looking across the field, and I said, "Hey, what's that on top of that flat mountain there?" And he says, "Well, that's actually a landing strip." And I said, "Oh, like a local airport?" He goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, anyone can land planes there. It's planes coming in and out of there. It's rare, but they do." And I go, "Huh." A couple of beers later, I'm sitting there, I'm going, "Hey, what do you think about, a fresh hop beer where we fly in, we pick hops and fly right back to Denver and drop them in the boil?" And, we'd had a few beers by then, admittedly. And he eventually was like, "All right, it's time for bed. I'll leave you guys to it." So here we are camping in the hop field in our tents and just having a good night. And the next morning I had this idea just burning in me. So who's the first guy I call? Eric. Eric runs this awesome brewery called Flight Co. and now Flight Co. Tower. And they are centered around avionics. And I said, "Oh, this is our guy." I said, "Eric, I don't have a plane, but I got a plain stupid idea is what I've got. And would you hear me out?" And he kindly heard me out. And this was on a Sunday, and we set it up for flying up there Wednesday. And so that morning, I walked back up to the hop processing plant, and I talked to the farmer. I said, "You know what? We got it done." He goes, "You got what done?" And I go, "We're going to be back here Wednesday flying planes in to pick up hops." And he goes, "No, you guys haven't sobered up yet. There's no way." And I said, "It's a done deal. I'll see you in 3 days." And so sure enough, Eric pulls it off, gets us a couple of planes, and here we embarked on our first mission to make the freshest wet hop beer on the west slope of the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah. No, that's that type of adventure request is, a little crazy, but it's what us pilots and us, general aviation pilots thrive on, is an excuse to go on a mission. And it allowed us to kind of do the two things that Flight Co loves is, aviation and beer in the right order. We get to go fly first and then have a beer.
Right.
But yeah, it was crazy, the timeline that it came together. Flying across the Rocky Mountains is not a trivial task. It's pretty treacherous. It's high altitude. There's a lot of, considerations and dangers to be aware of, which we do take into account. We don't want to go do something completely unsafe just to make a beer. But it worked out. just right. All the planning came together. The recipe came together. I think the first year we made a saison, which was I love that beer. That was great. And then we wanted to bring back more hops over the years. We got some more planes together, so we shifted towards an IPA, which has also been a great beer over the years too. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fun collaboration. I love the adventureful spirit behind it. Ryan is just kind of the exact guy that would come up with something crazy like this and be able to pull it off in a couple days alongside us. So it's been fun.
It had to be like bizarre. So talking to this farmer after God only knows how many triples you had, Ryan, but like you need to know, okay, what does this farmer have? What's available on Wednesday? And then, call you, Eric. Hey, Eric, can you come up with the recipe by Wednesday? We're going to get X amount of, whatever hop that guy had.
Yeah. I mean, it was quick. It was a little complicated. And then you had to get all the brewers together, right? Because someone's got to be brewing the beer at like 5 a.m. because we're leaving at 5 to 6 a.m. at sun up. And so they start the brew process while we're in the air. And so when we get back, we literally walk into the brewery and dump the hops into the boil. So like the timing, the recipe, what's available, the weather, as Eric hinted towards, is really your boss on this one. I mean, you can plan and get shut out. And we're going over some, pretty big mountains, 14,000-foot peaks in the Rockies here. So it's not an easy feat. That you got to have a decent plane too. And luckily, Eric and his dad have built their own plane, and we got to fly in that, which was pretty impressive. But the other aspect I really enjoyed about it too was you feel like you're doing a little bit of almost smuggling, drug dealing. You've got these big packs of green, almost looks like marijuana going into planes in the middle of nowhere, and we're flying it across the Rockies. I mean, the smell of that plane was just incredible. And then we're passing hops around, and we're actually taking pictures as we're flying back, and we're trying to come up with an idea and of what we're going to call this beer. And we eventually throw some hops up on the kind of the instrument panel of the plane, and we're like, that's it. Hop is my co-pilot, and that's kind of in the air on our first trip back is where the name came from, and it's kind of stuck, and we do it every year now.
So like this year, you said, weather was an issue. So do you guys just, get in the car or, just truck it in then so you could get it done right away?
That could have been an option, but we decided, since aviation wasn't involved, the spirit of the beer was away, so it would be hard to call the beer hop as my co-pilot without actually going and flying it. So yeah, I'm actually amazed. We've done it 5 times, I believe. Yeah, 2019 to 2024 in a row. I am absolutely blown away that it worked 5 times in a row before the first time it didn't. Because Colorado, the weather changes pretty quickly. You never know what you're going to get. There's a lot of really windy days, a lot of days that you shouldn't go flying. And then the other hard part about this, miracle that it worked the first time with 3 days notice. Planning it in advance, the hop farmers don't know when the harvest is going to be until a couple weeks before the harvest. So, there's a large window that we have to target for the harvest. And then once they know the couple weeks that the harvest is going to be, targeting the even smaller window of a good weather day, really decides when we're going to get there. And then they harvest some hops, some varieties at the beginning of the harvest and some later on. So really, a lot of those factors, our schedules, our brewers factors, the weather determines which hop we're actually going to use in the beer. So it's kind of a fun beer. It's never the same every year.
Yep. Yeah, it's true.
Those that aren't familiar with fresh wet hop beers, can you guys explain the difference and how that translates into taste?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I get a lot more vegetal flavor out of a wet hop beer. They're you ask any brewer, they're very hard. It's a lot more work to brew a wet hop beer. You have a lot more going into the vessel that you then have to get out that's wet and heavy, and it soaks up a lot of your liquids. So they're time consuming, they're laborious, but if done right, they're fun. If you think about it, you can only do it once, one season a year, right? It's got to be within a couple of week window when they're freshly picked. Ideally, you're not going to have those sitting around for days. You've lost your kind of advantage, kind of your reason for doing it. It's a popular thing to do to kind of celebrate the industry, I think, and celebrate the fact that we can do something like this as far as, fresh, wet ingredients. We're an all Belgian brewery, so wet hop beers really aren't a focus of ours by any means. So for us, it's kind of out of the pocket. I'm sure Eric can talk more to what he enjoys about a fresh hop beer.
Yeah, I mean, we use a lot of it in the boil. We use a ton of the wet hops in the whirlpool in the later part of the process. So in addition to that vegetal grassy flavors, it really brings through an aroma that is unique. And I think that's kind of my favorite part of the beer is that first sniff right before it goes in your mouth. It's unique. It brings everything that we do together. And yeah, like Ryan said, as an industry, we get to hops are a main component of the beer. So celebrating the harvest with a fresh hop beer is one of the funnest things we get to do all year round.
Like I'm sipping on a local Chicago one here. This is a wet hopped beer for pizza, which is an Italian Pilsner from Off Color. And they grabbed the hops from Michigan so they could do it right away. But I definitely get like the vegetal aspects you guys were talking about. And it almost, while it's still a great beer, I almost get like some tea like qualities to it as I'm sipping this right away.
Yeah, for sure. I've picked that up in some of ours too, and it's just a very unique flavor. And again, it's hard to replicate, right? It's fresh harvest. You kind of estimate what you think will give you the right flavor, but every harvest is different. You haven't tested these hops yet per se, right? Get how much alpha acids are in there, all of those details. You're kind of shooting from the hip. So we do our best and adjust every year. We've certainly learned a lot, but they're unique beers. There's an entire Billy Goat does a fresh hop beer festival on their hop farm every year, and that's pretty interesting because everyone brings their fresh wet hop beers to the farm that we fly into essentially. So it's kind of a celebration, I would say, and kind of a fun thing to do, but it's not something you would try to run an entire brewery off of per se.
No, I see what you did there with the word celebration. That's the one fresh wet hop beer that probably most people know from Sierra Nevada. That's the one that I believe they had to be the first one I ever tried, or
Yeah,
I know of that I tried.
yeah, me too.
And I just saw actually on social media somebody posted a picture with a can of it today. So I guess those are rolling out. But yeah, that's always one of the best beers of the year.
Yeah, and short shelf life,
Yeah.
right? You don't want to sit on these. So when they're out, you drink them, you enjoy the season, and into winter you go. So it's I kind of enjoy that part of it as well.
Well, like, what are you gonna do to like top these adventures? Like down the road, Ryan, are you gonna like DB Cooper out of the airplane and land right next to the brew kettle and throw him in? How do you top what you guys have been doing?
I don't know. Space flights are so hot, Eric. What do you think? Was there to fit that in
Oh,
somehow?
I mean, it's funny you should mention that. I currently am also flying a skydiving aircraft on the side,
Mhm.
uh, a King Air. So I go up and take people, and they jump out into the football stadium. That is an idea that I think we could do to even further shorten the time of transportation. Is a faster airplane, and yeah, there's no ground transportation at the end of it. It's
Oh,
straight out
now
of the
we're
airplane.
talking. Now
Hey,
we're
Yeah.
talking.
I haven't been to Flight Co yet, but I've been to Brews. So you've got that nice space out back that you could just land right there at the band, right at the stage of the band, and boom, you're right in.
Yeah, I mean, if we're dreaming crazy dreams, which I think we can do here, and we have the ability to make happen in the years to come. But something we've talked about is bigger, faster airplanes, and going to the mecca of hops, going to the Yakima Valley and getting a large batch from there, and then someday when we have the means to have access to a large commercial aircraft, hop harvest happens in the other, 6 months away in the other hemisphere. So perhaps we could
Sure.
figure out how to get some hops from New Zealand back in a hurry and looking at a fresh out here.
You heard it here first, Dave. You
All
heard
right.
it here first.
Well, if anyone could do it, I put my money on you guys there. Well, I had mentioned earlier, I talked to you before, Ryan. I've been to your spot. I really, outside of what I just saw, I didn't know much about Flightco until like the last week. And actually, I used to work in our airline tower at O'Hare, and I had to
cool.
send my buddies in a group chat. I'm like, have you ever heard about this place? They're like, no, get more dirt. We need to go.
Yeah.
So what could you tell us about Flightco? Because it's in the Stapleton Airport, the old tower.
Yeah, the old control tower building. So, I mean, the original Flightco, we started in 2019, about 6 years ago, in a different location, just as a brewery tap room. Really meant to be the gathering place of the aviation community. It's a small community, but it's a very passionate community, and they like to get together and have some beverages from time to time. So we started out there, got great response there, and then COVID hit, and the Stapleton Control Tower building was being run by another business. There was a Punch Bowl Social out there, and they weren't able to recover from the pandemic, and it sat vacant for a while. And we had one of our investors come to us say, "Hey, you know what? We're gonna buy the Control Tower building if you guys go on it." And we mixed reaction of, "Oh my God, this is Denver aviation history. We get an opportunity to preserve this old airport that I as a kid got to fly in and out of and have so many great memories of, and so many other people in Denver have great memories of, and also terrifying in the sense that we were running a brewery, a 5,000 square foot tap room and brewery with a single product, going to 25,000 square feet of bar, restaurant, activities center, entertainment center, private events, all these additions to the business that we weren't planning on getting into, but decided to get into because of the building and where we could take that land. So it's been quite an adventure. Drinking from the fire hose every day, but we're figuring it out and making the building our own, and have a much further reach within that aviation community to be that gathering spot. The United Airlines Training Center is 3 blocks away. We're the largest single pilot training center in the world. There was 20,000 pilots going through to every 9 months to the recurrent training, and it's kind of a hub. So yeah, we have a really unique opportunity to kind of be this big voice and centerpiece of the aviation community in Denver.
His facility is just fantastic, Dave. You got to get out there. Being in the aeronautics area anyway, you would love it. But it's literally the old control tower that we used to fly into as kids. It's massive. You can see it from all across town, and that's their new home. It was just like it was meant to be.
Just looking at the website, and you have like 360 views from all like the different locations. It looks really cool, but is it a thing? And the one thing I noticed, it gave me a flashback from my tower days. No aircraft or no airplane tower. They have no elevators. I'm like climbing up steps. My God, it just like made my calves hurt again.
So yeah, there used to be an elevator when it was an actual control tower. There was an elevator. There's an elevator shaft there. When they decommissioned the tower, they took out the old elevator, and then the previous tenant that was in before us only put in a piston lift it goes up the first 3 floors of the old FAA building, which is the business and the restaurant that we operate in now. But yeah, if you want to go to the very top of the tower, it is a 14-story hike up the stairs. This last year, we hired a historian and a tour guide. The best tour guide he could have ever imagined just kind of fell into our laps. He's a private pilot. He was a flight attendant for the past 10 years, and he's a professional tour guide. Became very excited about the opportunity to essentially run his business within our business, and we just let him run with it. So over the past, I think, 8 months, the whole tour, the entire stairwell up, he's collected photos from history archives and people that lived in the area that would send it to him. And he's got decade by decade up each flight of things that happened. The airport opened in 1929, so it has a massive history to it, and some pretty cool things have happened there. Now we like to highlight the fact that Die Hard 2 was shot there. So I think there's a couple scenes in The Shining that like they're running through the airport there. And then up at the very top, once you get to the very top, you can bring your beer with you, which is necessary. And it also gets the blood flowing. So it kind of gets the bubbles running through your veins. By the time you get to the top, you're feeling pretty good. And to cap it off with that 360-degree view of Denver, and it's by far and away the best view in Denver. You get the city skyline with the Rocky Mountains in the backdrop, and you can see all the way to Pikes Peak, all the way to the new airport, and every direction you could see a landmark that So the dream for the future is to get an elevator up there and turn it into the coolest lounge and event space in Denver and in the state.
I can't wait. My next visit, I'm going to be hitting both of you guys up. So definitely I need to go see this. I know my buddies were like, dude, we got to make a trip. I'm like, all right, let me know.
Yeah. Let me know when you're in town. It's a fun time. There's a lot to do.
You'll enjoy the fact that you drink enough beers. Eventually, you need to go to the restroom, right? And so when you're in the restroom filtering the beers for Eric, they've got a live feed from Denver International Airport's tower into the restroom. So you're hearing about all the air traffic while you're working on filtering beers. It's a pretty cool effect.
I thought you were going to tell me it's like an airplane bathroom or it's like, this near.
Yeah, you get the real experience. Yeah. And the food is just as good. No, the food is good.
Yeah, it looks like you guys have a great menu. I was going through the food menu. I'm like, oh, looks pretty good. Count me in for this.
Yeah. No, it's American pub fare, but we like to think of it as a little bit elevated, but definitely something that everyone knows.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, Ryan, you've got two locations at Brews. The original one, 1675 West 67th Avenue, and you have the Brews on Fax or off Fax. I know there was a fax involved at 1495 York Street. When we were talking in June, you were thinking maybe another location might be in the works. Anything happening with that?
Yeah, Dave, we're under contract for a third location on the west side of town. So we're pretty excited about that. It's on the west, right up against the mountains, pretty much here in the Denver area. So we're excited about that. We closed next month, so I don't want to get too far ahead on it. But as long as things go the way they are, it's looking pretty exciting. It'll probably, I don't know, a year and a half to really build it out and make it what we want. But we'll own it, which is nice, and we're excited to kind of control our future, and then we can continue to come up with crazy ideas like hop flights with our friends.
Now, is this going to be more of a production facility or just like a tap room?
Yeah, so it'll open up first and foremost as a tap room, a really nice tap room with a lot of outdoor area, and then the second phase of that property is to move all of the production under that house. So it'll become our mothership. It'll feed all three locations. It'll be owned by us and controlled by us, and more importantly, we've got everyone under one house that will now kind of be protected under. So we are excited about that. It's been years in the making, and we finally found the property. And so yeah, I mean, Eric needs an elevator, and I need a build out. So here we go. We're going to be busy this year.
Any contractors in Colorado? I got a couple jobs for you guys. Yeah.
That's right.
There's a lot of work to be had for sure.
Eric, like you mentioned, like when you started, you were at another facility. Do you still have that one open, or you just had the tower right now?
No, we shifted everything over to the tower. Yeah, the business took a turn in an unexpected direction, and we decided to lean into the new direction that it was going, and really focus on the single location. So, it's hard to say goodbye to the origin of the brand, but sort of exciting to see where it's going from here.
And I don't want to mispronounce the name of your street. So you're at 33120 Uinta Street. How do you pronounce that?
Uinta. Yeah.
That too. That would have been my second choice. Uinta Street in Denver. I mean, you can't miss it. It's a
Yeah.
it's a control tower. So just look for the tower and you'll find it there.
Yeah, if you get in with a couple miles away, you can guide yourself.
Yeah, you don't need a GPS. Just there it is. Yeah. So what do you guys have coming up? Any like new, I mean, outside of the, the elevator and hopefully the new tap room in the next couple of years, any new like beer projects coming up that people should know about?
The beer project, the system at the tower is a lot more fun and a lot more experimental. We've got a small batch 2.5 barrel system out there, and really, our brewer has kind of gone mad scientist. We really just kind of took all the restrictions off. It's not as scary to completely mess up 5 kegs at a time that it was to mess up 30 kegs at a time. So he's having a ton of fun, making the seasonal beers. He made a fun pumpkin ale this last year. We do some collaborations with local businesses. There's a local urban farm in the neighborhood that makes all their own honey. So we did a honey beer with them, cross promoted it, did a collaboration with them. Yeah, and just something new all the time. We have a ton of, just given the nature of the space with how large it is and how many activities there are. We get a lot of corporate events in the holiday season. So it's December, typically a slow season in the beer industry, but we're just losing our minds in December, trying to keep up with all the parties. So yeah, it's fun. It's always changing. A lot of neighborhood events. It's a great neighborhood. It's the entire Stapleton Airport, this massive piece of land turned into a single master plan community. I think it might be one of the largest master plan communities ever built in the country. Very well organized. Everyone moved in at the same time, so there's this bond of unity, and there's really not many other places to go around there. So community events are really good for us.
All right, awesome. Well, I can't wait to visit you. Ryan, what's going on? What do you and Charlie have worked up? Any new concoctions?
Oh, always. We're like Eric. We love to play and have fun in that arena. Thanksgiving, we always release our Brut Le Grand, which is our champagne beer. We're one of only a handful of breweries in the world that take that style on. And it's just really a special beer, to really light and delicate and creamy. It usually ends up around 10 to 12%, but drinks like a 4% blonde. So when we serve that in the tasting room, it comes in a champagne flute on a tray with a piece of Belgian chocolate. Why would you not try one of those, right?
Absolutely.
So we're always doing that. We usually do some sort of Christmas beer, usually based around a Belgian double or a Belgian quad. So we always love that. Josh Martin, he was our assistant brewer, and he's worked his way up through the ranks, and he's now taken the full reins on the program. And he's got so many great beers coming out right now. We can hardly keep up. He just released a saison. We call it Louis Saison. That's just unbelievable. And then we went over to the Western Slope, not far from the hop farm. We went to the Talbot farms, and we picked up some grapes, and we picked up some pluots, and we made 2 different versions of that saison and bottled cork and cage bottles. And those are coming out, and they're really fantastic. So yeah, we've got a lot of really fun stuff on the horizon. We brew seasonally a lot, being Belgian style. So when the fruits or the hops are ready, that's when we're doing this stuff. So right now we're pretty busy going into the winter season, but yeah, we're excited and looking forward to seeing where Josh takes this program. What he's done so far has been absolutely phenomenal.
Well, I can't wait to visit you again. Can't wait to see you, Eric, and visit Flyco in person. That's definitely on my next trip once I get my elbow back in shape and jump on a plane and go visit you guys. Eric, didn't I see on your video, didn't you start out flying in the Chicago area and like one of the promo videos you sent me?
Yep. Yeah. My grandfather was living in the Chicago area. The field was called Clow Field. I think it's still around. It might be under a different name now, but a grass runway. Got to go for a ride in his 1946 Aranca Champ, which is an amazing airplane. He moved out to Colorado when I was 5, and got to spend my childhood riding in those old airplanes, flying around, landing at other airports, getting breakfast, and coming back. And then, yeah, just it's been in my blood my entire life. So starting a brewery, there was no joke or no question that it was going to be aviation. And my other business partner, Jason, we went to college together. He came from a family of aviators as well. So the whole time we spent brewing beer together, we were always talking about airplanes.
I can't wait to see this in person. Flightco, once again, they're at the old Stapleton Tower. Brews has 2 locations in Denver. You guys have to check them out. And I can't thank you guys enough, Eric, Ryan, for coming on talking about fresh wet hot beers. And best of luck to you guys down the road.
Thank you, Gabe.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Cheers. Good job, Dave. Thanks for having us.
I'd like to thank everyone that supports the show over on Patreon. If you'd like to help out the show, head over to patreon.com/beerinfront for more information. If you have any ideas or show suggestions, please email me, dave@beerinfront.com.
Public Offering Brewing, located at 1736 South Broadway in Denver's Platt Park neighborhood, opened its doors with the simple but bold idea: we don't just offer our beer to the public, we offer our whole brewery. Their official opening was in November of 2022, and Public Offering quickly established themselves as one of Denver's top breweries. Joining me now to talk about their fresh, wet-hopped beer collaboration with Lone Tree Brewing is Cody Higginbottom, founder and head brewer at Public Offering. Cody, thanks so much for taking time out today.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
The collaboration Fresh Class Ticket. This sounds like an amazing beer right up my alley, a West Coast IPA loaded with fresh citrus hops. How did this project with Lone Tree come about?
I've been exploring trying to do a fresh hop beer for a while. I think, the logistics just haven't worked out, and a lot of that is on my schedule and also our like kind of kid schedule and whatnot. And so our tap room manager, he and I were kind of talking and discussing a fresh hop beer. And, for me, it was like, I really wanted to do it. But given how delicate the beer is, for 10 barrels, it's a lot for us to go through. And so I kind of was thinking, if we want to do this, we want to, find a collab, like a partner to collab with. And he's good buddies. He's kind of came from the same tree of Dry Dock as most of the guys from Lone Tree. And I think he just kind of brought it up with Lone Tree's taproom manager, Mike Webster. And then Webster talked with their brewing team, and then it just was kind of like, all right, let's figure out how to do this. Yeah, so it's fun. Those guys have been super supportive of us kind of out of the gate. We just never found a time to do a collab beer with them. So it was really fun to kind of finally find something to do with them. And it was great for us, especially with this one, because it's just, something very different that we've never done before in here.
Yeah, like I know Jerry and the team at Lone Tree is great. I talked to him, I think about a year ago. Like I was reading on like one of the press releases, you guys were tracking the plane and all of that coming in with the hops.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Yakima Chief, they had sent some promotional emails about what they were trying to do and putting, fresh hops on a Alaska Airlines flight. So I just thought that they did an outstanding job. It's probably like a lot of logistics on there and that we really don't see, but it was a super smooth process. And, we kind of woke up on Tuesday morning and had the freight bill and the tracking, and we're kind of following it. And, they were like, don't start mashing in until everything's landed. And, we were kind of a little bit pressed for time. So I was like, I think we're good to go. Like, it looks like it's on the plane and it's in the air. So we're just going to go ahead and start. But yeah, it was a really fun project. Kind of cool to do something where obviously like we just don't ever get a chance to get up to Yakima. So it's kind of neat to be able to kind of bring the valley down here to us.
Yeah.
So it's a really fun project.
Like doing this collaboration project, like, your equipment, your machines, the idiosyncrasies, doing a collaboration project like this, what challenges were involved in that?
I think it was just kind of making sure that everyone was on the same page. Like, obviously these can be, it's an expensive beer to make. It's a lot of fun, but it's expensive to do. And I think that, for me, it's like, if we're going to do this, let's just go all in on it. And so I think it was kind of like, let's not just, if we're going to use fresh hops, like how many different ways can we use them, and kind of really try to highlight that. And so I think it was, that was part of it, and kind of having everyone agree, like, let's really go for this. And then I think the other thing was just trying to figure out, like, how do we, put in enough of the fresh hop flavor without totally overdoing it and still making it drinkable to the public. Because I think at some point, if you just cram so many fresh hops in, it just becomes very, vegetal, or like kind of, it's just very green. And so I think it was just trying to kind of shooting ideas back and forth of, like, how do we kind of figure out ways to dial this back? I think another thing is we just don't know, we're never really like sure on, I don't have anything tested in here in terms of IBUs, but, it's kind of like we know the system, and, from a lot of tinkering to kind of have a feel for, like, if I want, what I guess, quote unquote, 60 IBUs is to us, at least. Obviously, when you're using the fresh wet hops, you just don't know what the alpha acid is. And so I think it was just kind of trying to figure out, like, how do we dial that in, and then just making sure that we kind of made those flavors pop. So
Yeah, and you don't really know until you're brewing, because you
right.
can't
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
like test this out a month ago, a
Yeah,
month
yeah.
before. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
for
it's all
sure, for
kind of
sure.
wild.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was super fun. It was really helpful to have those. They had done a couple of fresh hop beers in the past, and so I think they just, had a few ideas of, like, this worked for us well. At least, obviously their system doesn't totally translate to our system, but I think it was just they had done things a couple different ways, and so we kind of bounced some ideas there, and then, I think just like reading online and looking at podcasts, obviously it's helpful because a lot of, the industry is very helpful and kind of divulging information. So we kind of channeled what we could grab from a lot of the breweries in Yakima Valley that do this more often, and kind of figure out, like, what do we need to alter in our process to make the beer happen and make it taste as, as good as it can be.
Well, I noticed that it's on tap. Looking at your tap list, are you distributing it, or just on tap at both your location and Lone
We-
Tree?
It's just at our location in Lone Tree. I kind of think considered it. We don't really do much distribution at all. We but we do, like, we sell it all through our tap room, and we have to use a third party to do it. I think the other thing is, it's like you're not getting a ton of waste, but obviously, we ended up kind of dialing the batch size back, so we basically, we have a 10-barrel system, but we dialed it back to 8 barrels, just with the amount of fresh hops that we were getting, kind of the calculations working backwards, it made sense to do like an 8-barrel batch. And so I think we were just like, we're splitting this down the middle, and it was, let's just try to rick through this as quickly as possible through both of our tap rooms, and kind of maximize, like, obviously, like I said, it's an expensive beer to make. So, when you start to put it in different vessels and cans and whatnot, you're kind of cutting into your margin. And so I think we just said, let's keg it and go from there, and just sell it very straight through our drop lines. So
Well, in addition to these fresh hops, you're also using freshly killed malt, local malt from Root Shoot. So Fresh Class Ticket really is as fresh as a beer can be. Was that something that, both you and Lone Tree, the team there, pushed for with this beer?
I probably push for it a little bit more. And, we have a really strong relationship with Root Shoot. We, right out of the gate, when we opened, we had signed up to be craft malt certified. So you're effectively saying that you'll use, I think the threshold is like 15 to 20% of all your annual malt needs to come from a local maltster. We're probably more or less, like, I'd say closer to 85%. We go through Root Shoot. I'd probably do more if some of the specialty grain that we need to get for some beers, they just don't do. But, we have a really good relationship with them. I think that they kind of felt like, they're trying to kind of push, like, how do we, get our foot in the door a little bit on some of these, wet hop beers. And I think it's just like a cool idea of theirs to say, okay, we're going to take like a fresh, like as fresh as they can logistically do on the malt side. And so I kind of said to those guys, like, I'd love to use, we use a lot of Root Shoot, and I'd love to continue to use them. And they're always like great partners for us. And so, yeah, so I kind of, like, I'd say I pushed that aspect of it. And it's, it's nice. Like, I want to try to, like, push Root Shoot into other breweries, because I just think they have fantastic malt. So it's kind of a fun way too to not necessarily introduce the root shoot to Lone Tree because I know they've used them before, but just kind of like, you know, show them kind of one of another reason why I think we use them and why they're a valuable partner for us. So
Well, why is using local craft ingredients such as, malt from root shoot and other ingredients, why is that important to you and the team at Public Offering?
I mean, we're very much a neighborhood focused beer, or excuse me, neighborhood focused brewery. And so I think kind of, we're trying to build like a very small community in our neighborhood, and involve everyone in our community. So I think part of that is kind of involving our vendors, from our local community as well, to be a part of our brewery. I mean, I think one of the things where it's a little bit ironic because I know that there's some great hop suppliers on the Western Slope in Colorado that do, that offer fresh hop beers. I know it's a little bit weird for me to say this and then be flying in, fresh wet hops from Yakima, and then also get fresh dry hops from Crosby Farms. But I think part of it was just the timing again for us. Like this was something that worked in our schedule to do in September. And I think a lot of the hop harvests here in Colorado tend to be like kind of earlier August. But again, I think the big thing for us is just trying to, put a footprint as local as possible. We, sell everything effectively through our draft lines. And so, local is important to us. And I think that, I'm asking our guests to support a local business. And so I think I kind of need to reciprocate that on my end and support other local businesses that we use. So
Now I'm going, reading through like your tap list, and I noticed that your beers are all gluten reduced. Now, using like so much craft malt, how does that work to reduce the gluten in your beers?
we just use it's a enzyme Clarex. And so, they've got a calculator online and we don't test our beers and we tell everyone that we don't test it. We're, dosing to the manufacturer's specifications. So I think that, per what they say, you'd be reducing the gluten to under, I think it's 20 parts per billion, which, for a lot of kind of, if you're not necessarily gluten, we would never tell anyone it needs to be gluten free or that as celiac, you should be drinking this. But if, you kind of have like a gluten intolerance, I think that this, in theory, once it's below that threshold, it doesn't affect your system as much, or it's, it's minimal. So yeah, we just, we dose it to the manufacturer's recommendations. We probably overdose a little bit. And like I said, like we've never tested it, but I do have a couple friends that there's some other breweries around here. I think Odd 13 was one of the first ones that kind of made a big thing about this of how that they were gluten reducing their beers. And I know that, one of my friends that kind of switched over to drinking their beers and noticed a big difference in terms of his, I guess, gut health and how it impacted him. And, he's kind of said the same thing when he drinks our beers that he, it's like a minimal impact on him. So it seems like it works. I think it's a lot of people kind of, I guess, ask about it or appreciate that we do it. And it's a pretty easy thing to do in terms on our end, and it's inexpensive as well. So,
And it doesn't like affect the taste at all of the finished product?
I mean, I've never noticed it. I think when we first started, obviously, like I feel like our beers are a little bit all over the place as I was kind of getting my feet wet with our brew house system. But I just for kind of my own time and figuring things out, like we weren't gluten reducing all of our beers initially. And then we started to gluten reduce everything. And honestly, like not that we're brewing a lot of the same things over and over again, kind of seems like everything's new in here. But I've never noticed a difference in terms of mouthfeel or flavor or aroma perception or anything like that. So yeah, it seems like, and I think that what the manufacturer says as well is it shouldn't impact anything, in terms of flavor or appearance or profile. So
Oh, it's
yeah.
cool. So definitely, well, next time I'm in Denver, I'm going to have to try
Please do.
one of the gluten
Please do.
reduced beers, but you need to sign me up right now for the off the record hazy. Reading the description, it's orange lifesaver and Swedish fish. Absolutely sign me up for that one.
Yeah, it's funny, like I always have a hard time. I kind of joke like I start to lean into it a little bit more, but sometimes I feel like we see some of the descriptors that, we'll use or other breweries use. And it's like, I- you know, I, it's fun to kind of play around with it and think of like some of these nostalgic flavors, at least for me, about what it brings back. And, sometimes it's obviously like a little bit of like a marketing gimmick in some regards. And I think some people, tend to go too far in terms of like, oh, it tastes like X, Y, and Z. It's kind of like, I don't even know if I could tell you what that tastes like. But yeah, I think like at the end of the day, we're kind of pushing with that beer. It's like definitely has a little bit more of a perceptible sweetness. It kind of has like a candy like flavor to it. And so I think for us, when we're trying to, obviously we'll have like right now we have 2 hazies, but we'll have, 2 to 3 hazies on at any given time. And so, my goal on the brewing side is to make sure that we have a little bit of a different flavor profile and mouthfeel and body and all of that. And so, obviously a common question when someone walks up is like, what's the difference between these two? And so it's try to give it a little bit of like, hey, this one maybe seems a little bit more candy-like or tropical. This one could be a little bit more citrus, and on our menu in the tap room, it's a lot more basic. Obviously, online we'll push a few more descriptors, but yeah.
Well, looking at the pictures online, Public Offering looks amazing. It seems like a great neighborhood brewery for everyone, which is sometimes hard to pull off. So, what's the secret, Cody?
I think that our staff just out of the gate did such a good job of creating like a very, welcome, friendly, warm atmosphere for anyone that walked in the doors. And so then I think, when we started, like the neighborhood just kind of really enjoyed interacting with our staff and started to gravitate, and then kind of word has slowly spread. I think our tap room in general, it's a very open space. But, when we were designing it, try to do it a little bit different and having a little bit more of like warm lighting, try to kind of make it like feel like it's your living room or it's kind of your backyard. And then, I think that part of it is like we're fortunate that we do have such a big space, and it's just worked out that, we kind of initially started to have a few people come in and enjoy celebrating, birthdays, baby showers, engagements, things like that. And it just, we've kind of really leaned into that. And we do have a big enough space where it works out that we could have someone celebrate their 40th birthday with 40 people, and we don't have to shut down the tap room. We don't have a private space, but we have enough space in our tap room where they can be celebrating in kind of one corner. And it doesn't feel like someone else walks in and they're like, oh, I just intruded on someone's birthday. So, I think part of it's like at the flip side is when it's a slow Tuesday and you walk in and there are like 3 tables, the place feels totally empty. But, I just think we try to embrace the neighborhood aspect as much as possible. And we've been fortunate that the neighborhood has really embraced us as well. And, I appreciate the amount of support that we've received from the neighborhood. And, we try to do our part to support our neighborhood as well in terms of, supporting different schools around here. If someone comes in and they're trying to raise money or something, we do our best as long as it kind of fits what we stand for and what works for the business, obviously. But yeah, it's like I said, I feel really fortunate with the reception that we've received, and we've kind of stuck to trying to be a very small neighborhood brewery. And I just think we continue to push that, and it's worked both ways. So
Another thing that I came across, this is like an invitation, if you will, to your customers and patrons to tell us what you want to drink. How has that helped you and the team at Public Offering?
I think I kind of walked into this just a little bit like I had no idea. Generally you kind of look at the statistics and see what's popular, and so obviously that's IPAs, and then certainly recently it's been lagers. I kind of, when we started to open, we're just going to start throwing darts at the board and see what sticks, and kind of listen to what people want, and kind of open to trying anything at least once. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and maybe we won't go back to that. And so I think, as much as we want to try to be everything for everybody, we kind of have to be cognizant of what also is going to sell through our draft lines. But I think that if someone is really like, we've never brewed an amber. We've had a lot of requests for an amber, but we've kind of leaned into, well, a lot of people like lagers. And so we've done, our Oktoberfest sells really well. We typically, if we don't have that, we'll have a Vienna lager. We'll probably do a dark Mexican lager. So it's kind of like in that vein of, this might not be your typical lager or your typical amber, but it has those, characteristics, and you're essentially looking for a malt forward beer. And we kind of have this just in a different format. And, I think it's just been listening to what our neighborhood wants. And that's typically, in that kind of like 5 to 7% ABV, pretty IPA and lager focus. And then, we'll try to do other one-offs here and there. And, I think kind of in the vein of the fresh hop collab, like I try to use a lot of our collab, like when we do collab with other breweries, to kind of test out something that I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable with just brewing a full batch on our own and trying to sell through our draft lines. But, when you're doing it with someone else, so you can kind of share ideas, kind of almost like get kind of what works in their tap room and maybe kind of blend some of that into our tap room as well. And then, hopefully you're kind of splitting the batch. So worst case, you're not sitting on a ton of beer, and if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And, I think we use that and kind of figured out like, oh, I wasn't expecting that we would, that a dark lager would work really well, but that was a, successful collab for us. And so, kind of leaned into that. Actually just brewed a second batch of a dark lager today. I normally, like, probably when we opened, I would have told you would never brew a dark lager, but that's, it's just kind of seeing like what works and kind of going from there. So.
Well, I mean, you sold me, Cody. So keep off the record and keep a love letter sour for me, when
right.
I get out there. Hopefully,
Yeah,
those two.
for sure.
And then you mentioned Vienna Lager. So, yeah, I'm definitely sold. So keep
Yeah.
those off to the side, please.
We'll do. Yeah, Vienna lager is kind of next on our list to brew. So.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Cody. If you're in the Denver area, particularly the South Broadway, Plant Park neighborhood, you got to check out Public Offering Brewing. Whether you're a seasoned craft beer aficionado or just someone looking for a welcoming place to enjoy fresh beer and good company, Public Offering has you covered. Once again, they're at 1736 South Broadway. Cody, thank you so much again for talking today.
Thank you, Dave. Really appreciate it.
All right, the first of the two wet hopped beers I'm going to have from Illinois. This one's courtesy of Dovetail Brewery here in Chicago. They put out Hopfen Lager. They put out a couple different variants throughout the year. This one is wet hopped. It's brewed with freshly harvested Super Sauser hops from Hophead Farms in Michigan. I love the Hopfen Lager line. It's really good. So let's crack this one open here and see how this one goes. The Hopfen Lager has a nice color here, good foam. Yeah, big hop aroma I'm getting out of this. It smells great. That's really good. I'm digging it. I'm trying to like get the taste on this, but the taste is fantastic. The Super Sauser hop, it's different than like your normal Saaz hops that you have that are grown in Germany or the Czech Republic. This is grown obviously here in Michigan. So there's different characteristics to it. And I'm still like trying to put my finger on what this taste is. The taste is really good though. I'm not like saying this in a negative way and just something that I wasn't expecting here. The taste is really good. Since it is a fresh, wet hopped beer, it has more kind of like a tea-like quality to it. It's more, tea is probably like the thing that I could use to describe it the most. But the taste is fantastic. Almost kind of like the malt almost gives me like an Oktoberfest kind of vibe to it, like a fest beer. So it's really good. It's not going to be around for long. If you see it from Dovetail, the wet hopped Hopfen Lager, you got to put this one in the cart. Now, I know they did one last year, and I think they're doing it again this year. Their winter version of the Hopfen Lager is going to be used with the same hops that they use in Sierra Nevada's Celebration Ale, which is another classic fresh hopped beer. So if you're in Chicago during the winter and you see that version of the Hopfen Lager, you definitely have to grab it. But once again, if you see the wet hopped Hopfen Lager, you know what to do. Put it in the cart. All right, next up on my Illinois wet hopped beers, I'm going to have from Off Color their wet hopped beer for pizza. This is a fresh wet hopped, and it's not an ale, it's an Italian Pilsner, which I'm a big fan. Their beer for pizza is a great beer. So this is an Italian style Pilsner, 5% alcohol. They use freshly harvested Chinook hops from Hophead Farms. They're out in Michigan. So let's crack open the wet hopped beer for pizza. Nice color here, like the one from Dovetail, and maybe it's something with the fresh wet hops. It's not clear. It's not like hazy, like a hazy IPA, but it's murkier than your typical Pilsner, or in Dovetail's case, their lager. But the color is really nice. Good foam here. Yeah, I love the aroma. They also use in this, outside of the Chinook hops, they use Nugget and Centennial whole cone. So you get those nice hops that in a lot of cases people associate with an IPA, but this is in a Pilsner. So let's give it a taste here. That's really good. Get all the hop flavors. I'm getting, like in the first one, it's more like I get like a tea-like, and it's kind of grassy that you don't typically get. But I do like the flavors. The flavors are really good, and it works well with this Italian Pilsner. That's really good. I mean, that's something you would just have all the time. You can't go wrong with it. So it's not out for a long time. If you see it, you got to grab it. Go over to Off Color, get you some wet hopped beer for pizza. All right, that's going to wrap things up for this fresh, wet hopped edition of Beer in Front. I thank you very much for listening. I want to thank the fine gentlemen over at Brews Beer, Flight Co Tower, and Public Offering. They're all located in Colorado. You have to check them out. Thank you to Emily Hutto from Radcraft for hooking me up with these people to talk about fresh, wet hopped beers. I want to thank the people over at Dovetail and Off Color for putting out some great Illinois beers that are fresh, wet hopped. I didn't get a chance to see Sierra Nevada's Celebration Ale for this episode, but I'll definitely pick that up and have that on a later episode. Have a great week, everyone. I'll talk to you next week. And remember, sometimes the fresh, wet hopped beer in front of you is the best one yet.